When I found the thread I shouldn't have, the screenshots on his laptop, the half-hearted apologies sent at 2 a.m., the location tags that matched places he told me were work dinners, everything inside me rearranged. Daniel had been my husband for 12 years. He was also, apparently, very good at compartmentalizing. He kept an unremarkable bottle in the little zip pouch he carried to the gym, the one he shook into his bag with the same casual secrecy as his other small habits. It was banal. No branding, no label. The same anonymity that made his late-night rendezvous feel like a performance. For a while, it felt like a theatrical prop, a symbol of the life he kept separate from ours. The bottle became a totem of everything he'd hidden. I should have stayed quiet. I should have taken screenshots, hired a lawyer, or quietly packed and walked away. But the night I walked into his office and saw the string of messages, something in me wanted a different punctuation to this story. I wanted him to feel small. I wanted the people he was laughing with to know that what they were doing was not clever. I wanted a scene. We're not living in a private world anymore. Every misstep is a clip away from public humiliation. So I thought maybe I'd give them a scene they'd never forget. I will not write here the method I used, not because it's dramatic, but because one small paragraph with the wrong detail could become a recipe for harm. The important thing is what happened next. An impulsive substitution of one bottle for another, an act meant to humiliate, to expose, to finally level the playing field between liar and lied to. It worked, too well. He left that night for a weekend away, supposedly with colleagues. He drove across the county to a roadside motel with a woman I'd never met. My pulse was a drum. I parked 3 doors down from the neon sign that blinked vacancy, breathed in the humid air and waited. I should have left then. I should have driven away and let the system of lies collapse in its own weight. But curiosity is a hungry animal, and revenge is greedy. When the couple returned late, stumbling and giggling, I watched from the shadows as the scene shifted from clandestine to catastrophic. Laughter turned to confusion, confusion to alarm. The motel door opened and closed and then didn't open again. A woman in a bathrobe screamed. A man cursed. Sounds that in a different life would have been private, intimate, or suddenly grotesquely public. Fire alarms started somewhere else in the corridor. A light bulb popped like a final punctuation. I heard the front desk clerk banging on the other room's door and then the footsteps, quick, professional, that strange, focused chaos that emergency responders carry like a uniform. The fire crew arrived with the slow, sharp choreography of professionals who have seen things both terrible and mundane. They set up ladders and hydraulic tools. They shined lamps into the doorway and spoke into radios. People gathered outside. The motel manager, a couple of teenagers on bikes, a woman from the laundromat across the street. Someone recorded. Of course they did. Phones are now a community's memory. I should have felt the thrill of success then, of poetic justice served. But watching firefighters wedge their tools into a closed motel door, their faces set and solemn, failing them care for 2 strangers who were suddenly humiliated and vulnerable, a surge of something else hit me, the wrongness of my choice. They dragged them apart. The images that followed were petty and grotesque in equal measure. A live stream that I didn't authorize, people whispering about karma, a dozen takes on what it meant to be humiliated in public. The fire captain did every professional thing right. First aid checks, calming words, no gloating. He even turned the camera away when he could. The couple were frightened and embarrassed, mortified beyond what the viral clips could contain. Later in the sterile light of my kitchen at 2 a.m., with the television playing a silent loop of the motel's neon sign, I called my best friend Mara. And for once, I said the thing I hadn't allowed myself to say. I did something stupid. "Stupid is soft," she said. "Blunt and practical the way friends are when they don't want you to keep spiraling. You did something serious." She was right. The news calls it prank gone wrong, but the legal papers called it intentional tampering. The sheriff's deputy who showed up at my door wore that half-embarrassed, half-judicial expression that says he doesn't want to be the one to knuckle the neighbor. He wasn't angry like a judge. He was tired, in that way that public servants are. Tired of people's private disasters becoming public records. You can't unring a bell in our era. The motel room pictures had been shared across platforms in less than an hour. The woman's vindictive texts, the man's shocked apologies, fragments of private cruelty were suddenly the basis for a story about revenge, punishment, and the erosion of dignity. In court later, the prosecutor spoke in a voice that tried to be reasonable. She said, "We're not interested in policing marital disputes, but when an intentional act endangers people's health or causes public disturbance, it becomes our job." There were fines, restorative orders, a mandatory counseling program that smelt like paper and hope. The couple had the right to press criminal charges. They did not. They were humiliated, but also, in their lawyer's view, complicit enough to know how to avoid boiling injury. But civil suits are a different beast. Humiliation offers a kind of currency courts can exchange for penalties. I sat through depositions with the mechanical patience of someone unplugged from their own oxygen. My lawyer, a woman with quick eyes and slower compassion, told me to stop talking on camera, to let other people explain my motives, to let the legal system unravel those motives into something the world could stitch back into meaning. I wanted to scream that I had been deservedly betrayed, that I wanted him to understand the small person he had been discarding. But none of that fit easily into the sterile boxes of law. The internet didn't care for nuance. People chose sides. Some called me an abuser, a petty vigilante who had escalated a marital dispute into public spectacle. Others called him the monster. A smaller group thought the whole thing deserved a satirical skit. My mother stopped answering her phone for weeks. My sister texted a single emoji, a long, slow clap. My son, 17 and brittle, told me not to come to his school for a while. That line punched me harder than any fine. Revenge, I learned, is contagious in the wrong direction. It infects whoever breathes the same air. The couple on the motel camera had their own ghosts. The woman had been humiliated at different jobs and documented it in a long thread of tweets that suddenly became evidence in a narrative I never meant to be part of. The man had his side, a desperate man trying to climb back into relevance among colleagues who had always taken him less seriously than he desired. In the courthouse, we were all suddenly stories people told to explain the fissures in their own lives. Months later, with fines paid and a public apology read into the record, the most surprising thing was how small the hashtag turned out to be compared to the present feeling, a low, constant knowledge that I'd crossed a line. I had imagined the glee of watching my husband embarrassed. Instead, I watched his face in the courtroom lose its easy veneer of control and become something pitiful. Humiliation had that effect. It shrank everyone it touched. Nobody asked me in those months what I'd planned to do with the grief that had birthed such a reckless thing. I started therapy because sometimes the law can punish your body while the work of shaping your soul into something you can live with takes other tools. Therapy is boring in certified ways, worksheets and breathing techniques and a lot of repetition. It's also merciful. It asks you to look at your choices without granting you the satisfaction of the quick fix. Slowly, I tried to repair the small things. I drove my son to school one gray morning and sat with him outside his classroom until the bell. He wasn't ready to talk, but he looked at me differently. Not with the naive fury of teenagers, but with a careful curiosity. My husband and I, when we attempted to talk, found that the scaffolding of marriage had become brittle. We spoke in edges and statements that tried to measure grief and found only raggedness. People occasionally post the motel clip with new captions, new angles, as if the footage is a lens to study human failure. Now, when I see it pop up, I feel the old ache, but also a steadier, harder kind of knowledge that I did something that changed a life, more than one life, and that the right response to harm is not more harm. There was no neat ending. The couple sued for damages and later dropped the suit when the city's mediation program offered counseling and a private settlement. We learned slowly and unevenly to be careful with symbolism. My husband and I entered a long, clumsy period of rebuilding, shadowed by the memory of that motel sign. We did not make amends in a cinematic way.